For centuries, we've been carrying profound pain from one generation to the next. So that will help us understand how come we talk to ourselves the way we do, we see ourselves the way we do.
You would know if you're suffering from depression or any other mood disorder by noticing changes in your life. And particularly in the Black community, I think the stigma of being crazy is huge. And that's probably the first thing that will keep somebody from seeking professional help.
Honoring yourself is one major core characteristic of love. Honoring means putting yourself above everything else.
It really is important for us to become more deeply aware of how our history continues to affect us. It's been too many ways of separation, enslavement, colonization, all forms of marginalization in our African diaspora, still today.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today as we start another conversation named Transforming the World Through Reflections, this time to explore the experiences of this year through the lenses of the film, The Rhythm of Blue. And so today, I'm so glad to be surrounded by part of the cast of The Rhythm of Blue, which I had a chance to be part of, and just hoping that our conversation will continue to add more to your reflections about the difficult experience this year, where the pandemic intersects with generations of social injustice, all of which is addressed in this film. So I want to introduce you all first to the creators of this film: Valaira Sa-Ra, J.C. Thomas, and Naoe. Please start us off by sharing what compelled you to create this film, to bring women together, to reflect on how the injustice of generations has affected us.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Melissa, for having us, JC, myself, and Naoe, for bringing us together, as well as the cast of The Rhythm of Blue, to bring this topic and of discussion to the forefront, the topic of depression to the forefront. The project came about, the documentary came about when JC and I met. We kind of actually had the same idea when we met. We actually met to start a short film, and we had started talking about, I told her that I was thinking about doing a documentary about Black women and depression, and she said, "Oh, I have the same idea, but I wanted to do a stage play for it." And when we actually discussed the details of our ideas, they were literally the same details of the idea. Wow. So it was then that we knew that this was something that it was divine. It just needed to be done.
Exactly. We both understand that sometimes in our community, in the Black community, women do go through things, and we are so busy trying to live up to the strong Black woman stigma that we don't discuss what we're actually going through. And so we don't think that it's okay when we're going through things, and it's okay that we're not okay sometimes. And so the whole running theme, the time that we were filming, was, it's okay.
It's
You know,
okay.
it's okay. It's just okay. And so we hope that that's the message that came through the film itself.
Mhm. Thank you, Joyce. Naoe, being the cinematographer in this project, what are your thoughts about why this had to happen? Why this film had to happen?
Well, Val and JC brought me in. She said she had been stalking me. But I was compelled to do it because mental health in our community has been such a taboo thing. I've been through talk therapy myself, and just dealing with my daughter. She's had some things, but it was always like, keep it a secret. And again, that strong Black woman, people always like, oh my gosh, everything you've been through, you're so strong. And it's like, sometimes I don't want to be strong. I just, can I just lay in the bed? And that's what I want to do. And with this, like bringing it back to get again with the 2020, I did have a bout because everything shut down. Everything I knew shut down. And so it is still relevant. Like, I was actually feeling hurt, like, for everything that's been going on. And I had to shut down. It's like, I can't be strong for nobody if I'm not strong for myself. So seeing the injustices, everybody else seeing it, and they still don't get it. And it's like, wait, you're seeing it. How can you not acknowledge it? Like, it's out now. It's not a secret. It's not, everybody got a camera now.
Exactly.
It's out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that hurt. There would be times where I would just cry. It's like, how can you not see and acknowledge?
Exactly.
So that's why it's important.
Yes.
That's why it's important.
Thank you for sharing, Naoe, what this year has been like for you in light of what moved all of you to create this film. I want to introduce you now to a beautiful colleague. We work together at Pacific Oaks College. I'm there as one of the adjunct faculty, and she's there as Vice President of Academic Affairs. She is the Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Bree Cook.
Hello.
I'm really glad that you're here with us and
Always a pleasure.
wanting to listen to your reflections about this year and having been part of this film along with all of us.
Well, still one of my, greetings everybody. It's always a pleasure to be around such beautiful women and beautiful souls, beautiful spirits. This is still one of the most powerful projects I've been involved with, just because the expressing of people's stories is so powerful. And Melissa, like, that's what we encourage our students to do, right? Is to share their experiences through stories in their essays and projects and sort. I think that it's so hard being an empath. It's extremely hard, like Naoe say, seeing everything and not feeling. So, even when I hear what my students or my staff or my faculty are going through, people losing jobs and countless kids that either my son knows or I know people that know are dying. It's so hard. And the thing that makes it so interesting right now with the pandemic is that we all have time for it. And it's a good and a bad, right? It's good because we all have time. We have time to march, we have time to protest, we have time to, write legislatures, we have time to discuss and process. But at the same time, it's in everybody's face all day, every day. All the things that are happening, right? And I don't think they just started. Clearly, we know there's hundreds of years of racism embedded in these systems and these things, histories of these things happening. but now we see it every day, every day.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's overwhelming. So think of people who don't have people to talk to, who never had the opportunity to experience mental health support or treatment or therapy ever in their life. You know, how are they coping?
I know.
How are they? Yeah, and that's what my heart hurts. You know, we hear stars now, you know, or people, public figures talking more about therapy and the acceptance of it in the Black community. But that's still a really small portion of the population.
Exactly.
So it's a lot. It's a lot to be aware and be woke, right? It's a lot to carry.
It is a lot. It's a lot. And so I'm thankful that we're having this conversation. So hopefully it'll add more to what people now feel forced to look at, because the pandemic is making it so that we cannot avoid seeing these things. You know, for people who were consciously avoiding it or unconsciously avoiding it, the quarantine is making it so that we must. And so it, for that reason, can be so overwhelming. And the arts have a way of supporting us. And so I invite the artists in this group who were part of the cast, actor Kay Benjamin and actor Tamiyka White, who were part of this film and share their stories, share their experience as women in this diaspora and how we navigate pain. So please share with us, you know, your thoughts on how this film connects with what we're experiencing this year.
You want to go first?
Yeah, because actually I got a text and they're stressing me about the meeting I left. And so I'm like, I'm trying to just be here. And so I'd appreciate it because it's so, I moved from LA to Atlanta because of, you know, I just set myself down and talked to God. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I want to move to Ghana. So within 1 month, I had everything packed up, the movers and da-da-da-da-da. But then I, you know, we talked and we said, and I'm a multiple and an empath. So does this make sense? I mean, you have your insurance here, things are, you know, and, you know, they are what they are. Is there anything you want to do before you leave the country? And I said, yes, I want to work with Tyler Perry. So who doesn't? What actress, you know, whatever. But anyhow, so, okay, so we'll go to Atlanta. So that's how I'm here. And Ghana before this was a 5-year plan, and I'm just in the 2nd year of that plan. But what I found, I got myself in trouble. In San Francisco, I mean, in the Bay, in LA, you can have cannabis. And I thought, well, I just won't have it anymore. And it was downhill. It was just downhill. Blood pressure up, depression, anxiety, couldn't sleep, and had to, it's been 10 years since I've been on Prozac. And I had to go back on, and I'm just not comfortable at all. And I found that you can get it, but, and like what you were mentioning before, all the resources I have money, I have PPO, and it's still, you know, you have charlatans, you have, you know, you can get it, but you have to go to a certain doctor, and, you know, it's very, and I was just thinking, what do women do who don't have all these resources?
Right.
You know, which, like you mentioned. And so, you know, I'm pulling it together and hopefully have something set up on Monday. But one of the things I had thought about in the past is like, I never could have lived through slavery. And I realized that I'm living through it now. It's just a modern version. And oh, wow, that was like, you know, so I'm like, you know, just facing it and doing the best I can. But I'll be all right. But it's, you know, it is what it is. I used to hate that saying, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I guess for someone, you know, for in lieu of the question as far as like how, you know, what the documentary has done and how it's correlating with now 2020, same song, different day. It's pretty much, this is a continued, I don't like to say the word suffer. So as a woman, as a Black woman who lives with depression and anxiety, yeah, these traumas are like, yeah, this is just following us from just yet another decade, another century, right? For someone like myself who grew up in pretty much hoods everywhere. I'm from Houston originally, and so what I call, like, you know, your ghetto diet. You know, you got your liquor stores on one corner, you got your $6.99 chicken special, because everybody's on a level of survival. And the idea of just whether you were raised on love or you were raised on survival, both, but most of the time survival, because that's what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get from point A to point B. So that's what I think is one of the beautiful things that JC and Valaira have been able to touch on, and just having to see if you are, because all of us brought all these different experiences in the name of wellness, right, and mental illness, to the film, and being an artist, being an empath, it combined and living intersectionally that way, it's more than a notion. So someone who questions and is lives in a sense of curiosity, and not really one who conforms by rules all the time. I understand they're there because otherwise we live in chaos and no one really wants to do that. But the brain can be a little bit like that with not being able to get to a place of calmness, and that's what therapy and being able to have a conversation about mental illness, especially amongst the Black community, and of course even more so within Black women, is very much the appeal, because we're, like JC touched on, and all of us have mentioned, and we could probably, you know, repeat throughout this discussion. You know, again, it took me a long time to even understand the phrase of a strong Black woman. It is exhausting to do that all the time. Our ancestors, as far as I'm concerned, didn't have a peaceful sleep at all. I'm one of those, and I am a descendant of that, because I look at my current health now as a woman that's of a particular age, in her late 40s, of a particular size. These things are constantly weighing on me if I'm not moving in a sense of consciousness. I had to learn how to do that. So individuals like Dr. Cook and yourself, who are in behavioral sciences, in our clinical professionals who teach us, and, you know, people like myself and all of us here at K and the like, who've been in and out of therapy. Like I've been tracking down my therapist during this pandemic, because he's taken on as a worker, you know, as a DSW, and I understand, and thank goodness for the app HIPAA Bridge, but I check in, like, you know, are you there? But you know, since I can't speak to him directly, thank goodness other tools that I've learned from him and other therapists over the years, you know, the tools of journaling. Yes. I just got into meditation. I just got into yoga, because I did, but you catch me 20, 30 years, you know, catch me 20, 30 years ago growing up, that's not even thought of. That's not a part of the conversation, because girl, ain't nothing wrong with you. Right. It's the man. Right. So for us to fast forward to now 2020 and know that, you know, we're looking like, you know, everywhere you turn, we have Ahmaud Arbery, we have Breonna Taylor, we had what we all saw with George Floyd, 8 minutes and 46 seconds with this man's knee on his neck, and the death of that. Then it's like, no, can't take an attitude, oh, just another day for Black people to die, just another, you know, life that doesn't matter. No, this has been our story, America, the world. You don't see that a lot. And you don't see that a lot. So to take a document and have artists raise its voice to, or hold it up to a mirror, you know, the mirror to society, is one of the most powerful tools in how we not choose to survive, but how we truly choose to live. And that's a part of saving ourselves. So for these sisters to take that, a very uncomfortable and uneasy topic of depression, to say the word depression, for me, was hard to say at one time. It was hard for me to even embrace that this is like, this, I'm not associated with this. This is me living in denial. So those things I've been able to understand and see that, yeah, as a person that's a part of the story, gladly would approach and ask to be a part of it, just like, yeah, absolutely. Let me tell this story. Let me contribute to this narrative. Let me contribute in my way, my story to this conversation, because it's a conversation that's just beginning to get started, and we got a long way to go into continuing and to providing tools and resolution, and even just the acceptance of it at all in our communities and our families and the like. So I think that's the beautiful thing that I've enjoyed about it, and seeing that what we did a few years ago is very much still a part of the conversation as we're living in this pandemic, and not to, and hopefully not trying to, bypass surviving, but just trying to live. And for those of us who are mothers, and make sure that our children come home safely and alive, and, and everything, the list is endless. So I believe that creativity is a very much a powerful tool in holding up a lens of like, this is what we've been dealing with, y'all. Black women, Black families, Black people in the diaspora have been depressed through this trauma called slavery. And there should be more documentaries like The Rhythm of Blue, and filmmakers and cinematographers like Naoe and Valaira and JC and storytellers to keep pushing that narrative.
Yes. Like you, I am so deeply thankful to Valaira and JC and Naoe for, allowing your art practice to serve as a platform to invite us all to reflect on what we've been going through for generations, especially the not allowing ourselves until now to give it a name, because we're so immersed in survival that there's no time to say something, I need help. We were taught to say, I'm all right, keep it pushing. We're fine, I'm okay. And this is true in our diaspora. So many cultural narratives insist upon the keep going to the point of depletion, because survival is the main priority. So I thank you for making this film. And I'm also thankful for all the artists that are inviting the world to reflect on this, because we need it. And here we are, the quarantine sat us down, and we have to look at it. We must look at it. And it's helping that we're having this conversation, because for people who did not have the resources before the pandemic, their challenges increased. And so hopefully this is one way of being supportive. Then at the same time, even while all of us have been working on these pain stories, still we needed support in this pandemic. So I'm wondering, and I would like to also invite Zuri, a spiritual healer, part of the cast, to please share with us, about the importance of having a circle of support to move through pain. There you are.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
it's important. It's very important to have a strong circle of support while you're really cycling through everything. For me, I am when you're trying to be conscious and heal from your own trauma, and then try to be conscious and not inflicting that same trauma upon, your child. And then so then it puts you in a whirlwind, like, oh my gosh, did I really just teach her this, or really did she pick up on this? Now I have to heal her and heal myself. So having a strong support, like sometimes when you get in that space, it can be overwhelming at times. And so it's just really good to just tap into your support system. For me, I'm a big writer, so it's always good to just write. I've been doing like video reflections. So the video reflections are good to actually visually see what it is I need to really tap into in order to really stick strong to the support system that I have created, and make sure to stay focused on the things that do bring out happiness and smiles within, so that I can tap into my system. But if our mind is, it becomes easier to kind of deflect and push away the support system. So I just feel like it's just really important for us to just always have self-reflection time in order to really tap into those around us.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Bree, I would love to hear your thoughts on something that us clinicians have been just grappling with this entire pandemic, and that is our worries about people who had such difficulties accessing resources, and now they feel trapped. So safer at home is a phrase that didn't feel applicable to everybody.
Right.
So, you know, I think here's an opportunity for us to share how we've been worried about people suffering pre-pandemic.
Yeah. It's so hard. I took the opportunity. I got invited to be on a short video call for Black Lives Matter LA. And they kind of do a call, you know, each week. And I was one of the guests. And from that, I actually developed a list, and I can share the Google Doc, just a free Google Doc that listed clinicians that were accepting clients right now, because everywhere is full.
Everywhere.
Everybody doesn't do telehealth well, and it's not like it was a one-to-one. Everybody who is a licensed clinician or even an intern didn't automatically go to telehealth, right? And so there's even reduced resources from what was available. And then that's assuming that every client or every possible person has the ability to telehealth. I have students who we had to buy computers for, you know, and just because they didn't have, you know, and we're like, oh, we're just going to go online, and you just assume that people have these resources, and they don't. You know, never mind all of the K-12, you know, kids who and parents or families who are trying to make education work, right? Assuming that they're not on their phones looking at the screen. It's been incredibly hard. And I have to, like Zuri said, find time to reflect, come down. Actually, I had a group of girlfriends that I went to grad school with and graduated, and, you know, we're still all close. We've actually started weekly Zoom meetings just for the opportunity to be able to talk, you know, and we don't all do the same thing, but it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? Like, everybody needed to check in. And I think at any level, whether you're a child struggling with, you know, going to school online, you're a professional, you're a star, everybody is being affected. Everybody's being affected. And if you can't get to mental health services and you don't have an experience, like Tamiyka said, with learning tools, it's just extremely hard. And it's been frustrating to not cry every day, knowing that there's so many people who don't have access to stuff. And then we wonder why there's all this day drinking, or for people who would have normally, right? You know, and I'm like, well, what do you do? What do you do? You know, and people have to cope. You're finding some kind of way to cope. And so it's actually thinking about ways that I'm trying to find ways to provide supports obviously without doing therapy myself or offering therapy services myself, how else can I, you know, support people who really need stuff, you know? And so yeah, that's where we're at. I so appreciate, Melissa, you every week, you know, you're on with people, you know, and you're interviewing people, just using the platforms, right? And sharing positiveness and hope, because we still need that, you know. At some point this is going to end, you know, and hopefully we'll be able to come out on the other side. But
Right.
yeah, and come out whole.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, Bree. I mean, I have to tell you that in the early part of the quarantine, I was feeling so emotionally drained. You know, you were talking about us being empaths, Tamiyka also, you know, and so the feeling is so weighty. I cried so much, and I said, I need to do something. Yes, we provide therapy sessions. We do them on screen. We do them by phone. We do the best that we can with that because it has its shortcomings. There's nothing can beat in person, but it's better than no support at all. You know, and then us therapists, we have had, especially therapists of color, we have been going through it like you won't believe, in a way that's more intense than we are used to managing. And so it's taken so much, and I know that that's part of what moved me to decide to create these meetings as a way of inviting the community to reflect. You know, when we meet with our students who are in training to become clinicians, we talk to them constantly about the power of pausing to reflect. Journaling being one version of that. Like Tamiyka mentioned journaling. Zuri, you mentioned talking to people that help us feel uplifted. We need a village. We can't do this without a village. It's just not possible. And so,
may I speak on
yes.
something really quickly,
Yes.
that you had addressed to Dr. Cook about pandemic, and I just wanted to say it's still, I think, in correlation to what this point that you're on, not to veer off path, but as a person, again, you know, who's totally pro therapy, like, you know, the things that are not necessarily available. I mean, yes, you're working in, you know, as a profession, you both work as professionals, you're in the academia settings, but, you know, the things that people are not even aware of, and I even got educated because, I mean, one thing I think the stigma that comes along with, in addition, for those who even begin to step their toe in the therapy pool and say, all right, I'm gonna try this. It's an economical thing. It's like, oh my gosh, how expensive is this? But even for some, and that's been me in and out. Like, I want to, or a lack of consistency, because like you start a session, you're on a roll, you're feeling breakthroughs and you can feel the difference. But then, oh my goodness, my insurance, if you have it, is expired, or I don't have the money to cover this $125 whatever an hour that's being charged. But here's another connection that I discovered, you know, in a tool, social services. Like, I was not aware of, and that's why I have my current therapist now, is, you know, referrals upon referrals. But those things are accessible for people that of a particular social economic background, you know, that have to depend on, you know, aid or, you know, stamps, what have you. But those are even made available, and so many people are not made aware of that. And so I'm sure you share those tools on those lists that you compile, and, you know, Google Documents,
we can do better. We can do better.
But it's like, but yeah, and no indictment whatsoever. But that's what I'm saying. Like, how refreshing when one does lean into it and embrace this idea, because this is a whole different thing to even get, you know, a whole new suit and clothes and language to get into. But just to give, you know, just a little shout out to you all, because it's like, it's made available, and there's been some wonderful LCSWs, MFTs, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists that are on these rosters that are waiting to talk to people like ourselves that have these traumas and want to get better and live well and be whole and live whole as much as they possibly can, but from someone from this bird eye view as a patient who actually practices therapy and wellness as best as one possibly can. It's that's another part of the conversation, to lift the stigma when it comes to tapping into how I address this trauma, this depression, this multiple personality, et cetera, that you might need to be diagnosed with or undiagnosed with. And that is if you are of a particular, maybe, you can talk to your social worker, your caseworker, that there's actual programs and group, not only for individual sessions, but also for group sessions. So I just find that to be fascinating. But again, one of the many things that we in the Black community do not have access to. And I don't think it's solely on the shoulders of you as clinicians. That it's like, I just think, where are we placing our priorities when it comes to where these funds go? But that's a totally different discussion. But I just wanted to say that, because I just think it's imperative. When I found out that information, I was like, oh my gosh, I have access to this?
Yes.
I have I'm not ashamed. I've been on, in and out of, AFDC and social, and programs, but okay, sure, it's good for me to go ahead and get my car and pick up these stamps, but what? Wait a minute, there's some things for therapy? Give me this list. Let me talk to these people. Let me make some calls. I was, oh my God, it was, I have access to a professional that I can talk to and get some understanding about whatever's ailing me.
Thank you for saying all of this, Tamiyka, because one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is that the pandemic really has placed a magnifying lens on how resources are not equally distributed. And that's nothing new. It's been going on for generations, but we just are seeing it like never before, or rather, for people who, needed to see it, they're really seeing it now. We've been knowing it, and therapy, among the many forms of support, of course, Bree and I are biased in favor of therapy. This is our life's work, but we definitely acknowledge there's a wide range of forms of support. But as it relates to therapy, our people, for years and years and years, shy away from it because of the stigma, because of what you mentioned earlier, Joyce, that I'm strong, I don't need this, I don't, what? We just survive. And also because therapy for a long time has been associated with the oppressor. I don't trust those people. I don't need to be going over there. So maybe the pandemic is yet another opportunity for us clinicians to continue building bridges with our community so that they begin to see us as a trustworthy resource. We were working on it before the pandemic. Here I come with a shameless plug about Pacific Oaks. Pacific Oaks College is dedicated to clinical training that emphasizes on cultural context. And so we were already busy with building bridges of trust with our communities. The pandemic is making it so that all clinicians are busy with that.
You know what? It's a good point, Melissa, that you bring up just now with that. What I found out is that even some of our adjuncts don't know about all of our graduates that are now licensed clinicians in the field. And I saw a post from somebody who was, promoting Black clinicians on her page. And she was like, I don't know a lot of, Black and Latino male clinicians in the LA area. And I was like, oh, I gotta get you hooked up with our alumni. But so there's so much work to be done to make it to your point. And Melissa, to you, there's so in sharing information and in sharing resources. And then that's just a piece of it. Because again, we have to deal with the stigma. So, there may be, okay, I'll, you know, get assistance in getting food for me and my kids, or, you know, getting some of services like that, childcare resources, or maybe housing resources, but I'm not going to necessarily go and say, or even go to the doctor, but I'm not going to say that I need mental health services, right? Or want access to those lists. And so we still have a lot of work to do to bring down the stigma, to even open the conversation, right? So when somebody shares a post with some list of some Black, you know, or Latinx clinicians, that you're like, oh, let me hook up with one of these people, or let me, you know, reach out.
So if your own adjunct don't know about your own services, and what just popped in my head was, what about like video introductions to let people know? I mean, because when we see a list, we just see black and white, and if we still have that stigma,
yes,
it's like, well, this is just another person on a, you know, it's just a name. They don't have a face. Just as many of us, you know, in the entertainment business, we didn't know we could do this until we saw ourselves.
right.
So how do people know they can talk to somebody if they don't see themselves reflected?
Great idea. It's so many things have come into my brain just as we started this call, you know? And so I'm taking notes. I'm gonna write them down as soon as this is over. But there's so many things, and our work is never done, just because everybody needs to be able to have the opportunity for healing. And healing doesn't look the same for each person. Sometimes it's just learning how to journal, you know, and understanding how you can do that. It doesn't always have to be therapy, but there's lots of therapeutic practices, right? Or it doesn't even have to be individual therapy. It can be groups. I know people who are doing women's groups, and, you know, there's so many opportunities, yet and still there's a lot of work for us to do. So
yeah, I wanted to touch on the what you just said, Bree, that healing doesn't look the same for everybody, because it doesn't, you know, and some people don't want to go and sit and talk to somebody. And so I think that ties in with the rhythm of blue, being that you've got to find your own rhythm to walk through your own healing. And that's what we call the rhythm of your blue. So find whatever the rhythm of your blue is, and that's okay too. So I don't want people to think, you know, oh, I got to go talk to somebody. That's what they're telling me. That's not what we're telling you. We're telling you, you got to find your way to walk through your healing the way that works for you. That's the rhythm of blue.
You know, I totally agree with JC, and even with Naoe, everybody, because it's like, you know, what was rolling through my mind in those last 2 points. I mean, take Kid Cudi, for instance. Obviously, you know, an actor of that set, but we don't have, I mean, that's wonderful. He's come clean and he's shared it, you know, and no, you know, on a particular popular show that he lives with depression. But it's like, yeah, that's his rhythm. That's the walk that he took. Every path is different. Yes. You know, so if it is, you know, because while it's all coming back by way of this discussion with the documentary, what filmmakers do, what writers do, what clinicians do, how we even as human beings have to even, you know, we know that we're in this election is coming up, and the need that we need to vote, and the importance of filling out the census, because in order to get these programs and these funds allocated in our communities properly, again, tall orders, one thing at a time. But it's like Bree saying, this work, like, we got our work cut out for us. On the grassroots level, on every prong of the ladder, to, you know, to truly make our cultures, our community, and our culture to be as whole as we possibly can. Because right now, all of us are just living with trauma every day, all day, witnessing it, breathing it, and then, like Naoe said, I'm just tired, and I just start crying, and I just go into, I mean, like a week or two. Like I was crying around George Floyd for a good 2 weeks. Chadwick Boseman just passed away. I enjoyed John Lewis. I cried for I don't know how many days. But and I think I'm like, okay, I understand, I'm in mourning, but there's something much more layered than that. It's on top of it. So it's everything that we're all saying that's very much needed and necessary. But how we as artists and creatives, I believe can be working hand in hand with clinicians to keep, as we do anyway, to keep saying, hey, let's take a look at this. We're not going to force it on you, but there's something to consider on. This could be a way to talk about whatever you think is ailing you.
Yeah, we have to work together. No, go ahead, Val.
Oh, sure. Tamiyka, I just wanted to touch when you say how trauma is layered. We live in a mentally ill society. Like, our society is mentally ill to the core. And I think that the pandemic, I like to look at the bright side of everything, because even though we are in a pandemic, the pandemic has stopped everyone and forced everyone to look at what's wrong with our society, to look at what's wrong with ourselves individually. And to me, that is the beginning of healing. If we can't announce, and if we can't proclaim our mental illness, we can't begin to heal. And I think that the pandemic is showing us we need to see the racism. We need to see the sickness. We need to see the mental illness. We need to see all of those things so that we can begin to heal from it. And, until we see and announce that, this is what it is, because that is a part of being depressed. The reason why we as individuals are depressed as well as society is because we never talked about it. We all, we have racism, but it's like, okay, but it's hidden. Let's not talk about that. We have all these things going on, but let's not talk about it. We have the uncle who may be molesting the children in the family, but we're not going to talk about that. So all the things that we aren't talking about is what's causing our depression, which is the reason why we're depressed as individuals and the reason why America is depressed.
Absolutely.
And so I think this is a part of our healing is to stop, just to stop and to recognize that there is something wrong and that is okay, but let's begin to heal it individually and as a society.
Absolutely.
This is why I'm thankful for the work of artists like you, because you're inviting people to even recognize something as needing to be healed, needing to be addressed, because so many people are going through the motions daily of survival, completely unaware that something needs to be healed. So artists really bring this to the forefront, and I'm thankful for it because, Tamiyka, earlier you were talking about becoming aware of resources that are available. You are letting it be known to the community that the resources are available through your film, where you talk about the different ways that each woman that share their story in the film, each way that helped them move through their blue. Like you said, each person had their way of navigating their healing. And just to make it a conscious conversation is essential to even begin. We definitely worry about people who are for the first time discovering that some healing needs to happen, and they're discovering it in the pandemic, shut out from resources. So yes, this is the reason, to keep screaming out the different resources available. Absolutely.
And I think resources, like JC said, we are in a time where people are still. And so this is a time to find your rhythm. This is a time to discover a new you, or to discover what are those things that bring you joy. I have, during this pandemic, like all of you have stated, have gone through bouts of depression, and have found that I've just taken some time away, an hour for myself, to do a walking meditation. If I can't get to, a therapist or someone to speak to, then what can I do for myself that's going to bring me joy or lift me up? So I do an hour of a walking meditation or affirmation. So if you don't have those resources, there are other things that you can do which we should talk about. There are other things that you can do to combat depression.
Yeah, I totally agree with Valaira 100% because, you know, and you're so right, because it does, everybody's not gonna, like I said, earlier, I don't have access to my therapist. So what can I do? What tools have I learned over the years that I can take away? You know, and meditation, I just introduced myself to this reality. It's obviously been around for centuries, but I just started participating in it, and it has made a difference. I give myself dance parties in my space. I just turn on some music and I just start going at it because I just want to move my body. Because like Valaira said, because I find, and it does completely change the mood, my posture, because I can sit slumped and feel, oh my gosh, and it's all sending messages through my body that something is wrong, but it doesn't have to always last forever, right? So it's a language, it's a reimagining, it's a reprogramming of myself in so many ways. I mean, she's so right, because, you know, or just give myself an opportunity to step away and say, all right, you know, I'm gonna watch a good movie. I want to see a good comedy or something. I just want to laugh right now. So there's so many things within our reach that we can do that we don't have necessarily. In addition to the resources, what can we do for ourselves? If one, because it's an education. Right. You're learning this. If you are totally foreign to this idea, you can't address the problem if you don't really know what the problem is, but you know something's wrong, and maybe you don't have to necessarily have that answer to that question. But right now, giving yourself permission to say, if you don't like how you're feeling, and you don't want to keep staying in this sunken place, if you will, what can I do to change that around?
Yeah, so try a couple things. You might got to try a couple things. You might not be on the nail on the head the first time. So journaling may work, or it may not. And you're like, okay, but don't give up. Keep for things that make you feel good and change your.
Exactly. It's very important right now, especially now when people are afraid to go outside, because who knows, we're going to get sick or something, you know, who knows, the pandemic is still out there. So yeah, it's important to try things in the house. Like you said, Bree, journaling does work. Even if you don't know what to write, just write down how you feel, and that I don't like how I feel right now, and that'll be the end of your journal for right now. And that's, I mean, getting that feeling out of your body and onto paper, it actually really helps. This is something that I learned when I was like 14 or 15 years old. It helps just to get it out of your head. And stuff like that, and like dancing and just watching something that's meaningless. Doesn't mean anything to anybody. It'll just make you laugh and feel nothing for a little while. That helps me a lot too. So just little things like that.
As I'm listening to all of you, I'm hearing this common thread that we have definitely been learning more and more about, and that is that pain and healing live in the body. And so the pandemic may be inviting many to listen to their bodies more deeply. It may be rattling, and yet here are the opportunities to discover, well, okay, there are all these restrictions going on, but what's within my control? What is it that I have control over? Listening to my body, choosing to journal, choosing to dance, like Tamiyka was saying, you know, choosing to go for a walk. Zuri was hiking. You know, what's within my grasp? Maybe that's the beginning of this healing process, so that when we move into the other side of the pandemic, hopefully we arrive with better or more habits of self-care, of community care. Maybe we will go look for these resources that right now are not as available. You know, there's hope.
Melissa, I just wanted to put a different perspective on when you said pain and healing lives in the body. From the perspective of pain does live in the body, and if it goes unchecked, it can lead to disease. So when we have trauma, if that trauma does not go unchecked or if we don't heal that can turn into heart disease. It can turn into diabetes. I mean, we don't see things from that perspective because, you know, we tend to think that diabetes or heart disease or something may be genetic, and, you know, those things may come into play, but trauma, pain does live in the body and can cause disease within the body if it goes unchecked.
And that's why we need individuals, so many, and again, like Bree, like Melissa, to educate and share exactly what Val just said. Because even though it may not be genetic and hereditary, but I know I'm firsthand a product of that. And I don't mind, and I am, again, a woman of, in my late 40s, excuse me, pardon me. And that is very at the forefront of my wellness and my self-care. Taking care of myself, from everything from, I'm a vegetarian, making sure I exercise. I've been, consistently, just those things, and not being a fanatic about it, but just, again, it's like you're shifting. This is a person that wouldn't touch any of that.
You're just being mindful, right?
But being, and that consciousness, and making yourself consciously aware and being mindful of the fact that, I know, what is that saying by Maya Angelou? I know what I know how to do. When I know better, I do better. Because I'm trying to learn how to do better for the sake of my, it's life and death. It's really life and death.
Yes. Woo! My goodness, this conversation has been rich. I'm so thankful that we've had a chance to get together and think out loud together, exchange ideas, and definitely invite our community to reflect, to discover what resources are not only around, but especially inside. I thank you all for being here. I thank you, artists, for grounding us. I thank you for allowing us to reconnect with imagination, which is so needed for healing. And I look forward to more of the work that you are going to do and the work that you may invite us healing artists to join you in, because healing needs to be interdisciplinary.
Thank you, Melissa. It was a pleasure.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.